Write that down for me, Saito.
Write that down.
Write that.
With Fumi Saito and Justin Knipper.
Write that down for me, Saito. Write that down for me, Saito.
Hi, patrons. Welcome back. I'm Justin Knipper, and this is Write That Down with Fumi Saito. Fumi, welcome back. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Hello from Tokyo.
It's been a few weeks. How have you been? Pretty good?
Oh, I'm good. I just do a state of emergency and basically a lockdown in Tokyo, and haven't gone out much. I've been staying home a lot.
Did you happen to go to the Giant Baba Memorial Show?
Oh, no, I didn't go there. No. There was a couple more things that I had to do that day, yes.
I see.
But I'm aware of that, yeah. It's at the Korakuen, and it was just a Tuesday night thing, and I didn't, feel buzz either,
I didn't really. I haven't seen it. I've only seen the results. It looked like it made some good photos. But
yeah.
That's pretty much it.
And also, that's Giant Baba Memorial Show. I think that's something that they should have every year, big or small.
Yeah, that's right. Last year it was at Sumo Hall, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of scaled down.
And also, there was, last couple of years, there was Dick Baya Destroyer's Memorial, retirement, show. Abdul the Butcher's retirement, show. That those are the conjunction with this Giant Baba Memorial, committee thing. It's not run by All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's not run by any wrestling company. It's run by Mrs. Baba's relatives.
It's kind of like a committee where they all agree on what will happen on the show.
Then a whole bunch of wrestling companies sending wrestlers,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
it's a different motivation.
Yeah, just kind of exhibition, just celebrate Giant Baba.
Yeah, it's a good thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's nice. It's kind of a nice tradition. It's getting more and more common, especially the past couple of years, I've noticed. So
yeah, and then also this is something like Mr. and Mrs. Baba both gone, and the All Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Noah that used to be a part of this All Japan, original All Japan Pro Wrestling group, that they're going different direction. So once a year or so, if they want to do this thing, wrestlers can get together and have, it's like a celebration. I think it's a good thing. It's not really the business,
Well, it's more like celebrating the business.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah, so we are going to talk about Hulk Hogan in Japan today.
Yeah, that's today's main event. Yes. So today we're going to talk about Hulk Hogan, but we're going to talk about Hulk Hogan specifically in Japan because his career in Japan is very important and it's linked to his success, which he had just after arriving in WWF in the mid 80s. So, okay, so let's go back to what
and also that the success in Japan earlier on was the reason that he became superstar in America. The way the way the things were handled, all these things. We can go into detail today. And also, this is a good thing that the kind of topic we deal with in our podcast, the little younger audience, younger than we are, of course, they should, if they have these, stories and all these, like today, what Hulk Hogan have done in Japan before he was superstar in America, we have bigger perspective,
Right.
And these are the things we can help understand,
get a fuller vision of what's going on with the whole picture.
Well, because today's wrestling fan, I'm sure that Hulk Hogan is ancient superstar, but you learn so much from his success and what he has done and how he has done and how he handled himself and all these things.
And these days, because of technology, it's really easy to watch some of his matches on, New Japan World or YouTube or whatever. And there's a lot out there, and you don't see it until later because it wasn't watching Hogan's matches from Japan. It was harder to get if you were living
Oh, you're talking about the
overseas.
VHS trading
Yeah,
days.
that would be the only way. It's not like the WWF would ever show it on their broadcast, really. So, um,
Yeah, for
being
about
able
a
to watch it
year, we
now.
had Japan. We had wrestling spotlight for 1 year. You know, it's like a B show, wasn't it? You
Hmm.
know. Yeah. But anyhow, that Hulk Hogan, understanding Hulk Hogan will give us the like a big picture thing, and in the bigger perspective, and hopefully better understanding of the wrestling history of 1980s into 90s, and 90s into millenniums, the millennium into what we see today.
Hmm. I mean,
Yeah,
he was really, really big. He was popular, and I mean, we all know that he was, but I don't think the listeners out there might realize how wild people were for Hulk Hogan in Japan.
yeah. Let's do it. This is very interesting now that you have WWE Network and New Japan World, but there are quite a few Hulk Hogan footage on YouTube that either one of those big net like streaming services don't have. Hulk Hogan's matches on YouTube that are from like a Pensacola and or Japanese tag team matches from New Japan that are not on New Japan World. You can find those on YouTube, and those are very interesting matches too. Anyhow, yeah, let's how how should we start, huh?
So
Right.
I guess which year, like 1979, 1980 for Hogan. So I know his first match in New Japan at least was in 1980.
Yeah, May.
So that was his first tour.
Well, Hulk Hogan was born in 1953. Okay, 1953.
Okay.
His debut match in Jacksonville, Florida was 1977. He was already 24 years old. Rather, not right out of high school kind of wrestler. He was playing in band. He was working in different places. He was working at nightclubs as a bouncer, and he did this and he did that. Lot like a lot of this high school graduate who didn't know what to do about your life, right?
I heard he was in a band too.
Yeah, Ruckus.
Ruckus, yeah.
Actually, yeah, Ruckus and a couple more other bands, and he was actually fairly well known in Tampa, local, nightclub bar rock band scene. And he was living in an apartment where people like Fujinami, Killer Khan, Taiga Hattori, all those people were, living in this one place in Tampa. Actually, Hulk Hogan was living in the same apartment complex around that time, like in 77.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So he probably had a lot of charisma from the rock and roll scene already going into before he went into pro wrestling. Do you think?
But he was a big guy though.
Oh, plus he was a big athletic guy.
Yeah. And then also he was a well-known wrestling fan from Tampa, Florida in mid-70s. And when the superstar Billy Graham had run, young Hulk Hogan, not Hulk Hogan yet, Terry Bollea, he was always sitting in the same place, the third floor, third row at the Tampa Sportatorium, where he shows up every Wednesday after Wednesday night, dressed up as a younger brother of superstar Billy Graham with his tie-dye T-shirt and everything.
Wow!
Did you know that?
No, I never knew that.
Yeah.
So Hogan used to dress up, almost do cosplay like Billy Graham.
Yeah, superstar Billy Graham.
Wow.
Just like around the same time that Jesse Ventura was doing a cosplay, of superstar Billy Graham up in Minnesota, telling people that he was a younger brother of Billy Graham. And so how popular superstar Billy Graham was and how influential he was.
It's pretty amazing. So that was around 1977 or so.
And I'd say when Hulk Hogan was doing that.
Oh, he was doing it a little early. Okay.
Like a 74, 75.
Right. So mid-70s, he's doing that.
Yeah, teenage Hulk Hogan showing up at the wrestling match, NWA Florida shows, being a big superstar Billy Graham fan. Of course, he wanted to be a wrestler. And and I know that Hulk Hogan was trained by Hiro Matsuda, Probably today's fans don't know who Hiro Matsuda is either, huh?
I'm not sure. I mean, he was named to a lot of old school fans and hardcore fans would definitely know, especially if you're watching Florida. I mean, he was a big part of
Yeah.
that. And he trained a lot of not only Hogan, but he trained, I think, Lex Luger and
Lex
Ron
Luger
Simmons.
and Ron Simmons,
A
yeah.
lot of the big Florida guys, Hiro Matsuda was put in charge of. So
Yeah, actually, you know, the reason is though, it's kind of like Brad Reagan's school in Minnesota. Hiro Matsuda never really had wrestling school. And back then, all the, you know, old school wrestling promoter and coaches, or they call it policemen, you know, they hated the idea of running wrestling school. You know, have guys come over and pay a couple $1,000 and teach them how to do wrestling. And it was closed society thing that whomever came to this NWA office door, you know, asking them that they wanted to be a wrestler or something, they usually say, no, you can't, you know, you'll never make it. And the reason Hiro Matsuda decided to coach young Terry Bollea, Hulk Hogan, was that he was a big guy, and the guys like Hiro Matsuda and Bob Roop, all these shooters was in the back of the office. All right, bring him to the practice ring and stretch him. And if you stretch him that night, he probably won't come back tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, they don't want you to be a wrestler. You know, it's like there is no way to get into business unless you know somebody or something. And that also connects to the little episode of, there are a lot of wrestlers who writes autobiography books. For Hulk Hogan's case, there are like 3 or 4 books, you know, including Hollywood Hulk Hogan and a couple other biography books, right?
Right.
Hulk Hogan talks about that Hiro Matsuda breaking his arm or shoulder or whatever the very first night of the training. It was actually like an initiation thing. There is no such thing as wrestling school. If any young guy, big guy, or bouncer type, or weightlifter type, bodybuilder type, shows up at the wrestling office saying that he wants to be a wrestler, they'll take you back the dojo, sort of. The wrestling office is a wrestling ring and place to work out, and they'll put you in the ring with people like Hiro Matsuda or Bob Roop or somebody, and they'll make sure they'll stretch you, and you're not gonna come back. That's the very old-fashioned way of protecting business. I mean, complete kayfabe era, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's different is that Hulk Hogan came back the very next day. Let's do it again,
He wasn't scared. He wasn't scared off.
And also, I thought, I'm pretty sure that he felt that this is how you get in the business, paying dues. Now he felt that he knew some guys. And among guys that who stretched Hulk Hogan initially was people like Mr. Sato, who later on became Great Kabuki. Saito, of course, it's Masa Saito.
Mr. Saito.
And, Mr. Saito, yeah, Masa Saito and Great Kabuki. Those people were in Florida then, and they all right, we'll stretch this guy, and they later on became friends. But Hulk Hogan didn't really give up the first night, so he kept showing up. So Hiro Matsuda felt, well, we could probably make money with this guy, and felt that this guy has it. Very interesting, huh?
So, and at this time too, he was pretty big.
Yeah.
And was he bigger than most of the wrestlers down in Florida at the time?
Taller. Yeah, because he's naturally 6'7", 6'8".
He's a tall guy.
Yeah, and then also, what was interesting is though that the high school Hulk Hogan went to, the Robinson High School, there were Mike Graham, Steve Karn, a couple more, Dirty Dickie Slater. All those guys were in the same high school, but Hulk Hogan was not in that clique. It if you remember, this is American high school. Everybody play football. In the winter, either you play basketball or play hockey or you wrestle. In spring, you play baseball or run track or something. A lot of the guys play 3 sports, right?
Right. Especially down
How?
south.
Yeah, like a season, all 3 season sports, and you're a little guy, all that. And Hulk Hogan wasn't exactly the athletic click. He was a big guy, but most legitimate sports he played was a little league baseball.
So he was just a big dude who
Big guy,
big
yeah,
tough guy
and
who could stand
loved
some
wrestling.
pain. Yeah, loved
And
wrestling.
he also wanted to be a wrestler and wanted to be rock and roller too. When you were young, you want to be a couple things, right?
Right.
Either you play in band or you become wrestler. The 2 things that Hulk Hogan wanted to be. Later on, he became both, I guess.
Sure. And I mean, by the time 79, 80, he was sort of doing that already. So
Yeah.
after the training,
So,
Hiro Matsuda, he didn't stay in Florida for too long, did he? He went to Georgia for a little bit.
Pensacola, same Florida, Pensacola.
Mhm.
Yeah, and yeah. But Hulk Hogan did not really have this like a rookie time, like a real downtime, like a $10-20 a night paycheck time. He had that though, but by December of he debuted in summer of '77 in local Florida against a guy called Don Serrano, pretty good veteran. Anyhow, that by end of '79 he was already signed with WWF, his first run.
And around that time was when he first went to Japan, I think, wasn't it?
No, not yet. He wouldn't come to Japan until spring of 1980. It was after 6 months initial run. See, New Japan and WWF, WWE, WWF at the time, Vincent James McMahon, not today's James Vincent Kennedy McMahon, but father Vince McMahon Sr. He and Antonio Inoki's New Japan had partnership for about 10-year period, like 74 to 85 or some 11-year period. If you remember WWE champion, there's like a run, 3 months Madison Square Garden run. If you either your champions Bruno Sammartino or Bob Backlund or Billy Graham for that matter, same challenger usually challenged 3 Madison Square Gardens in a row. Remember?
Around that time, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, like a same challenger. First match, you beat your Bob Backlund, by count out or something. And second match in is double DQ or double bloody some match or car fee or something. And the third match, you'll have the conclusive, and that's why you have different challenger, new face challenger, new big time heel challenger for your Bruno or Bob Backlund or Billy Graham or those champions always have new challengers, right? Every 3 months. After they run that course, usually those top challengers in New York City and WWE area, they would come to Japan and have tour. That was the system.
That was the pattern. It seemed like for quite through the 70s.
Yeah. So, of course, the people like Bob Backlund, comes over to Japan, maybe once, twice a year. But New Japan have people like Andre the Giant, the Stan Hansen, before Stan went to Japan, okay? Dusty Rhodes, the Dick Murdoch, the Sergeant Slaughter, the Bobby Dancombe, the Paul Orndorff, all those people would come to Japan right after your New York run. And young Hulk Hogan. See, Hulk Hogan, the name was given by Vincent McMahon Sr., Vince James McMahon. He gave Hulk Hogan the name Hulk Hogan in December of 1979. At the time, Incredible Hulk, TV show was huge, right?
Mm-hmm. With, what was his name? What was that actor's name?
Lou Ferrigno?
Lou Ferrigno and
the scientist
Bill
guy.
Bixby. Bill Bixby. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
big show around that time too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he was
Oh, I'm sure that there are quite a few different Incredible Hulk since then. The
Sure.
movie version. Yeah, but the TV one, it was just silly, green, big,
Yeah, it was on
big body.
CBS though, so I remember pretty
Yeah,
clearly those
people
reruns.
watched it,
Yeah.
and this nerdy looking scientist change and he rip his shirt off and just becomes Hulk, Incredible Hulk. Anyhow, that the Incredible Hulk Hogan name was given, and he had this 6 months run. Actually, he was here on and off until like spring of 81. Anyhow, he was signed. Hulk Hogan was signed with WWE, WWF in December of 1979. Then he came and started coming to Japan in May of 1980.
So his first tour
Yeah.
in 1980, what did the crowd how did the crowd react, or what did they expect from him?
It was so well, well produced and marketed real well that all the magazine had their posters of Hulk Hogan from Madison Square Garden, and he was brought in a tag team tournament called MSG Tag Team Tournament.
Right.
No, MSG Singles Series. Before IWGP, there was a Madison Square Garden Series. It's a tour, single match round robin tournament tour. Every spring New Japan had. It's called every single superstar from Madison Square Garden will come to Japan. That was the whole concept. And Hulk Hogan, young, 26 at the time. Hulk Hogan was brought in with people like Andre the Giant and Stan Hansen and all the existing superstars. So he was in the main event package right away.
So he was that package that was sort of put together by WWF at the time with Bad News Allen and Tito Santana,
Andre the Giant,
Andre the Giant,
and Stan Hansen was a top gaijin American superstar in New Japan.
So
Stan
Hogan mostly did singles, or did he do tags on his first couple tours in Japan?
Both.
He did do those MSG tag tournaments.
Same year, yeah.
Say like with Hansen, I think.
Yeah, that year. See, 1980 alone, between May of 80 to December of 1980, he already had like 3 or 4 tours in the same year.
He was very busy. He was in Japan a lot more than I thought. When I was looking at the schedule, I didn't realize how much it was.
80 May tour and October tour, this November tour, December tour, something like that, And he was in the tag team tournament the same year too, as a Stan Hansen's tag team partner. That's a big push. Big push for a 3-year rookie, right?
So by the end of 1980, he was pretty well established already, it seems.
Yeah. So it was like Stan Hansen's blessing was like, this guy is going to be something. And yeah, it was a good position to be, in you come in as Stan Hansen's tag team partner. At the time, Stan Hansen, the biggest American superstar there was. And yeah. Then there was during 1981, there was a big promotion war between Antonio Inoki's New Japan and Giant Baba's All Japan Pro Wrestling. The number 1 American from All Japan, Abdul the Butcher, switched side from All Japan to New Japan. Therefore, Inoki against Abdul the Butcher, right? And the following month, the top star from All Japan at the time, Taiga Jeet Singh, he was signed away by All Japan Pro Wrestling, by Baba. So they stole each other's top talent. Then there was Dick Murdoch and Kim Doc, Chavo Guerrero, all migrated from New Japan to All Japan. From All Japan to New Japan, Dick Murdoch. There are quite a few wrestlers, that switched side at the time.
What was the main reason behind that? Was it just wrestlers looking for the best deals for themselves, or was
It was more like All Japan and New Japan, that All Japan Pro Wrestling Giant Baba Network Channel, Channel 4, and Yomiuri, huge capital. And New Japan Pro Wrestling, Inoki's, company was TV Asahi, Channel 10, and Asahi, capital. It's like kind of like you have National League Baseball and American League Baseball, two major companies in Japan, always fought for 70s and 80s, all the way to 90s, into millenniums. Yeah. The landscape would change when Inoki becomes politician and Baba, dies, and a lot of things have changed, but there was always, to learn anything at all about Japanese wrestling, there were two kings, usually one king in one kingdom, right? But in the wrestling world in Japan, there were always two major companies, New Japan, Inoki, All Japan, Baba, always fighting, two major companies. Anyhow, that all the established American names were with All Japan, and Inoki created a lot of new names for New Japan too, and those two big companies were always fighting. See the general picture of it?
Yeah, and it seems like this was right in the early 80s and up until 84. It seemed like it was really heating up around this time too.
Yeah, and then the schedules were similar. All Japan, New Japan both had springtime. You have single tournament. Inoki had a Madison Square Garden series tournament. In 83, it will change into initial IWGP. But All Japan, Giant Baba always had Champion Carnival in spring and the Real World Tag Team tournament in December. See, those schedules, and this is a calendar year that the Japanese wrestling fans enjoy. Anyhow, back to Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was, being put in pretty much the top cluster from the very first tour he was in.
And he was established and regularly visiting Japan a couple times a year from 80 to 81, 82.
83, 84, 85, actually.
That was kind of, 85 was when it stopped, was when he was exclusively WWF.
Yeah.
But
what was interesting is, though, that Hulk Hogan was huge superstar before he was huge superstar, a key person of WWE 1984 expansion. He did all that kind of thing in Japan before he did that in America. That's the point.
But in a different sort of way.
Yeah, he was actually pretty good politician. He proved himself in December of amongst these stealing talent between these New Japan and All Japan and the big promotion war between Inoki and Baba. Stan Hansen left, the biggest superstar of New Japan, Inoki's biggest rival, left in New Japan and joined All Japan, right? December of 81. So 82 on. Next 20 years, Stan Hansen will become biggest American superstar of the decade, of the century, with All Japan for the next 20 years. And Hulk Hogan decided to stay with All Japan and take Stan's spot 82 on and turn babyface.
From 80, so that's maybe from March or from May?
March of 81, he was already a babyface in Japan.
And he's not just a baby, he's a super babyface. People are going wild over Hogan.
Yeah, he wore kimono, Japanese kimono jacket, and around the time he adopted Japanese, ring costume, you wear black trunks, short tights with regular wrestling boots. What Hulk Hogan did was black wrestling shorts, wrestling tights, short tights, and ichiban kanji on it, right?
That's right. On his hip. I think it was.
Yeah,
was it on his boots too?
That helped too. Ichiban, Hulk Hogan, new nickname, kimono, costume, and then they introduced the new finish called Axe Bomber, kind of like your Stan Hansen's clothesline, very similar, but actually introducing a new finish for the right timing, that will get you over You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You will introduce your new finish into your match, start winning the match on weekly television basis, and he really became star babyface. And also he started having match in Japanese side against Americans. Tag team, making a tag team, with Antonio Inoki and Tatsumi Fujinami and all that. Make you made yourself a very unique American babyface. 82 on, yeah. And December of 82 tag team tournament, Hulk Hogan, Inoki made a tag team for the first time in one tag team tournament. That made him big star. Then 83, 3 years in making. Now you see, when you hear IWGP, you just think it's a heavyweight championship that you defend your titles, right?
Right.
But at the time, 3 years in making, 1983 inaugural IWGP tournament. It was a heavyweight tournament to decide undisputed world heavyweight championship. It's like I can't talk. This sounds almost childish, but at the time, all these Japanese wrestling fans bought this story. 3 years in making. 1980, Antonio Inoki and New Japan Pro Wrestling start vacating, returning all the championship belts. That the whole concept of IWGP, International Wrestling Grand Prix, was to determine the undisputed, the best wrestler in the world. To be able to do so, Antonio Inoki gave up his NWF title, right? Returned the title.
Mm-hmm.
And Abdullah the Butcher, I'm not sure if there is such title, but Abdullah the Butcher came in and he gave up his Caribbean heavyweight title. Taiga Jitsin came in and gave up his Asian heavyweight title. Sakaguchi gave up his North American title. Stan Hansen came in and gave up his cowboy hat, of all things. Anyhow, yeah, you gave up all the existing championship belt. Therefore, there's no more titles. The Inoki's initial announcement was, how many world heavyweight titles are there in this world? And I know that, yeah, there are quite a few, right? It was an antithesis for people like NWA, AWA, or even WWF, all these existing titles. Who really is the best? It's a very simple concept, but very interesting concept, right?
Very different from what NWA wanted.
Yeah. So they really gave up all the existing title and moved, the whole project. They made spring. They stopped Madison Square Garden tag that singles tournament and made it into inaugural IWGP heavyweight tournament in spring of 83. And the tournament final was Antonio Inoki against Hulk Hogan. And you would think, Inoki now established Hulk Hogan to become very first winner of IWGP tournament. Now you have your undisputed, the best wrestler in the world. That was the storyline. And people expected Inoki to win that championship tournament, and that would be like at the end of the movie, the end, right?
He's number one.
Instead, Hulk Hogan beat Inoki to become the first winner of the championship, the IWGP tournament. And he wore the very original black belt, the leather IWGP title, and then came back next year and defended. So, between 1980 and 84, he already had like 20 tours with Japan. Especially 92 and 82 and 83, he spent 15 to 20 weeks in Japan. 20 weeks is like 5 months in Japan, out of a year. And half the time he was in Minnesota. That's when I went to school there. Anyhow, half the time, he was in AWA, and half the time he was in Japan. And he was making more money than any existing superstars in America at the time.
Even Bruiser Brody?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Bruiser Brody, close call. Yeah. very close call, because he was making huge money independent in America and also huge money in Japan with All Japan, right?
So those two never really
Cross path?
yeah, they were with, I feel like they would be in Japan around the same times, but they weren't working
Oh,
for
yeah,
the same
a lot
companies.
actually. Yeah,
So they
All
were
Japan
always
and New Japan.
flip-flopping and kind of right across the street from each other, but never really hooking up. So
Nope. And they were interested in each other, though, I'm pretty sure. And also, when Bruiser Brody signed with All Japan, I mean, Anto Inoki's New Japan in '85, he was playing with the idea that Brody was playing with the idea that he split time and go to WWE and work, and also work in New Japan at the same time. But I quickly, I'm pretty sure that Brody quickly rather realized that if he went to, New York, went to WWE at the time, and Hulk Hogan against Bruiser Brody happens in America, Hulk Hogan will beat him 1-3, huh?
imagine that.
Well, and if you were on WWE ring, and that's how you do it, and the photos, all those things will come to Japan. That would hurt him, and yeah, Brody decided not to go to WWE.
So
All in all,
politics got in the way, maybe.
yeah, and then also people talk about a lot of today's wrestling fan talk about the nature of this wrestling business and all these things, and almost assume that the winning and losing isn't as important. But actually, for wrestlers, winning and losing, the record and the photos and the video footages, those are very, very, very important things.
And we have a lot more access to them than ever. It's pretty.
Now we do.
Now we
but
do.
A lot of times, Hulk Hogan or people like Bruce Brody at the time, real early '80s, they tried to hide some of the footages from other part of the world.
They wanted to have the two personas for the fans.
Yeah, and then
to the
also
fans.
they really care about the result of the matches. See, if you remember Terry Funk against Hulk Hogan in Cape Town, South Africa. Do you know anything about it?
No, when was that? What year was that?
I'd say 82, 83. It was right after Rocky 3 movie.
Okay.
Terry Funk was booked to Cape Town in South Africa, and he brought Hulk Hogan over, kind of like Rocky Balboa against Thunder Lips in the wrestling ring. So Terry Funk against Hulk Hogan did happen in South Africa, and they wanted to hide that because Hulk Hogan went over.
Wow.
Yeah, because that's what South Africa promoter wanted it, and wanted to have a match just like your Rocky 3 movies, right?
More like a cinema style match, like a boneyard
Yeah,
match.
I guess. Yeah, but it was a big production in South Africa anyhow at the time. But following month, Terry Funk had a tour with All Japan, and Hulk Hogan had a tour with New Japan, and Hulk Hogan told people that he beat Terry Funk in South Africa, and Terry Funk got real upset. It wasn't gonna come out, which did. Yeah.
Huh? Did they ever?
Pretty much 1980s tale, huh?
It sounds like it, because those are the top guys all over the world, not just in America, but definitely in Japan as well, especially in the mid '80s.
And also they thought they could hide those matches from different different part of the world, as if it never happened.
Yeah, it was like living two different lives.
Yeah. Anyhow, so but that really forced wrestling world to be a little bit more honest about the fact and what's happening in the other part of the world and all these things, and Japanese wrestling media and wrestling community and wrestling fans as a whole always was more reading oriented people, huh? In Japan.
In Japan, the news industry and sports magazine industry really really
Yeah, and then
fueled.
also if you remember those ta- tabloid sports newspapers on the train, any train stations in Japan, it
Convenience
comes out
store.
every evening. Yeah, Tokyo Sports, Nikkan Sports, Sports Nippon, those tabloid sports paper will cover wrestling every day. The results are in there, and yeah, the things some of the wrestlers fans know about,
Mhm.
But anyhow, what we're talking today was that Hulk Hogan was huge superstar before he was huge superstar in America.
Let's also talk about how Hulk Hogan was in the ring compared to how probably a lot of us are used to seeing him in WWF and
Right, because
WCW.
it was Hulk Hogan and WWE that changed his style, and his three punch and and big boots into the big leg drop 1 2 3 it was like a style which was designed after he became champion in America in '84 after Iron Sheik thing. See, in Japan, Hulk Hogan always worked like one of the Japanese wrestlers.
He never seemed like he was out of step with anybody or out of pace. It is true.
Yeah, being coached by Hiro Matsuda and Great Kabuki and Masa Saito, that helped too. But I guess uh, in Japan, well, probably our listeners out there probably don't know about this either. But in Japanese wrestling companies, there is no mic promos or your storyline and a skit backstage, and none of those things from like watching from Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. There's so many of these segments backstage, right? Japanese wrestling don't have those mics, promos, storylines, and then your catchphrases and all that. The Japanese wrestling always had just bunch of matches, during the 1 hour TV show. No promos. There are a lot of interference, yes. The fighting outside the ring, yes. Chair shots, yes. Juice, yeah. But always they showed matches. No promos, no big storylines. And Hulk Hogan came into Japan as a tag team partner of Stan Hansen. He worked Japanese style right away. And it really helped, And he's a big guy. Great opponent too, though. People like Andre the Giant, Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch, Sergeant Slaughter, Fujinami, Choshu, Sakaguchi, Original Tiger Mask, Killer Khan. They're all there,
Mike Sharp
Yeah.
Jr.
Yeah, that too. Younger Killer Khan. I mean, the Steve Khan, Ron Starr, younger Paul Orndorff. Yeah, younger Brian Blair. They're all there,
Did he team with
And,
Samu?
Yeah, Wild Samoan. Yes,
Wild Samoan,
yes.
Samu. Yeah, him and
Yeah,
Hogan.
Samu was regular too here. Yeah, for a bunch of years. Oh God, he was regular. Yeah,
That was maybe
He was-
towards 85, probably right before Hogan left.
yeah. One tag team tournament. Hulk Hogan's partner was Samu. Yeah,
So
yeah, I remember that.
around 85 was when Hulk Hogan stopped coming to New Japan and he stayed pretty exclusive with WWF. So this is
Yeah,
around June or so.
Final tour was like June of 1985. It was amazing to in hindsight, if you think about it. In March of 1985, there was already a WrestleMania 1. WrestleMania 1 meaning Hulk Hogan, Mr. T against Piper and Orndorff, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Billy Martin, Liberace,
Cyndi Lauper.
Cyndi Lauper, Muhammad Ali, and all that.
So everything was
That
exploding.
Yeah, WrestleMania 1, the renaissance of wrestling, the big, huge boom and everything. A few months after that, he still had regular Japan tour. Amazing.
So it hadn't changed, really. Looking at the schedule, it hadn't changed. In 84, it was a similar schedule as 85 when he was WWF champion, which is pretty, when you think about it and put it in perspective,
Yeah, well, then other WWE superstars like Andre the Giant, Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch kept coming over to Japan too. And at the end of '85, Vince McMahon said, "No, we're not sending any talent to Japan," because they were at the time WWF was running 3 shows a night, 3 different locations, if you remember. A show, B show, C shows.
Mm-hmm. In different parts
Yeah,
of the state.
Yeah, 3 different house shows in 3 different locations. One with Hulk Hogan in it, the other one was Piper or Orndorff in it. The third show was maybe like either you have Andre or somebody like Hacksaw Jim Duggan or somebody, and they did 3 shows,
Mm-hmm.
And all in all, they stopped sending talent to Japan at the end of '85,
And
and Hulk Hogan wouldn't come back until like '93.
was that the end of the kind of working relationship between WWF and New Japan then?
Yeah.
So that was it. That was the end.
That was it. And at the end of '85, it ended. Pretty much ended.
So, and he didn't come back. Well, he did. Do you remember? He did do something through WWF, the Wrestle Summit. He just appeared in 1990 or 1991.
Yeah, it was 1990.
Where he wrestled.
The 3 promotion working.
Mm-hmm.
Ichiban Wrestling Summit at the Tokyo Dome. WWF, New Japan, and All Japan.
That's right.
Worked together. And the main event was Hulk Hogan against Stan Hansen. Giant Baba Andre the Giant against Demolition. Tenryu against Randy Savage. It was a great show. Yeah. But it was WWE World Tour. Yeah. With the help of All Japan. And at 1990, Vince McMahon came over and sat down with Giant Baba, and he chose All Japan and Giant Baba as a partner this time. And also that Baba wanted to have New Japan on his side too. Inoki was out 1990. He was already a politician. And Sakaguchi became a president of New Japan. And Baba thought that Sakaguchi is okay, that they can sit down and talk. And at the time, that's another hindsight thing, that if All Japan and New Japan joined together to work with WWE, Vince McMahon and WWE, WWF at the time was going to come to Japan on their own anyway, sooner or later. And there was an intention by Giant Baba that if two local established major league company, All Japan and New Japan, work together, they will be able to block WWE from coming in on their own. There's a little motivation in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I didn't think about it in that perspective. So that was kind of on the table.
WWE was going to come to Japan as a new market with or without Japanese companies' help.
Well, they ended up doing that anyway, just I guess 10, 15 years later, right?
Yeah, right. 94, they did the Mania tour, not so successful. And they wouldn't come back until 2001 with people like Rock and Chris Jericho,
Was it?
It was another completely different era, completely different fan base. It was a success. But during 90s, 80s into early 90s, you would still need Japanese local group to, help WWE, to produce local show. That was the mentality at the time, anyhow.
So there was sort of a deal loosely between All Japan and Vince McMahon at the end of this. A little bit, yeah.
And at the end of that year, Andre the Giant started working for All Japan regularly, because WWE wasn't using Andre the Giant regularly. Under contract though, but they wouldn't be using Andre every week on television. And there was a Vince McMahon's blessing that Andre can come and work for All Japan company rest of his, reminder of his career. And Andre the Giant ended up having his very last match of his life in Japan 3 years from that point. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So that was those are the late 80s into 90s that the that certain period of time that the Japanese wrestling fan didn't have Hulk Hogan in Japan. That was when Hulk Hogan was huge star in America.
That was where his legend kind of blossomed. But between
first 10 WrestleMania,
between his break between WWF and WCW in around 1993.
He came back to Japan, New Japan.
Yeah.
Masa Saito signed him and had a single match against people like Great Muta, or teaming up with Great Muta and going against Hellraisers, you know. Hulk Hogan, Great Muta against Power Warrior and Hulk Warrior, the Hellraisers. It was really a dream match type of thing in Japan.
He also did some singles matches, right? He did Great Muta and Fujinami.
Yeah.
So he popped around a little bit, not too long, but he was there for some really big shows.
Right, and also he was making a kind of money per match but no American had ever made, you know.
And that was a time where New Japan financially was doing very well, I think. 1993.
Yeah, that too. But you know, somebody's gonna break the boundary and break the, you know, the establishment at the time. See, Mike Tyson was making like 10 million or so a match, right? A fight. You know, and then pro wrestlers' fight money isn't as big as pro boxers' money, so it's hard to compare. But at the time, you know, making over 100 grand a match was a huge deal for wrestlers.
Of course.
You know?
Yeah.
And Hulk Hogan was the first one to do so in Japan.
And he seemed to have stayed popular all throughout those years where he wasn't in Japan. Would that be correct? Could I say that? If his
during the 80s run, he was regular, you know, like I was treated like a Japanese wrestler, you know, and then working for All Japan, working babyface side, you know, and also going into legitimate superstar and going into IWGP tournament, in a very important singles tournament kind of thing. And also established tag team with Antonio Inoki, which was a huge deal. And one by one, Hulk Hogan really climbed up the ladder to be a super big, huge name in Japan. Then he was gone. And we read about him, you know, what he did, did in WrestleMania 1 to 3, that the Pontiac Silverdome thing, that Hogan against Andre, the Hogan against Macho Man, the Hogan against Macho Man again, and Hogan against Ultimate Warrior. All those things we read about and also watched VHS tapes in Japan.
It kind of sounds like a Greek myth, right? The hero goes away and has success in a different land, and then he comes back in 1993.
Yeah, a little aged, older and wiser. And when he comes back to Japan, he doesn't necessarily do those and big 3 punches and big boots into your leg drop or something. He does wrestle like Japanese wrestler in Japan, which is different. Yeah. So very smart, you know, the way he handled himself.
He picked where he needed to use his skill and specific technique, and
and then when to use it, when not to use it, you know, and the ox bomber, all those, the moves and sequence that he saved for Japan, you know.
So after that, he only had one more appearance with New Japan in 2003, and that was it. At least
2003, yeah, right. But he's been back in Japan quite a few times.
Oh yeah, as a guest with WWE.
Not just that, but he brought his son Nick over for the car market. You know that anything about the GTR? GTR is a Nissan Skyline line of Japanese 70s car. GTR, very fast, 5-speed car that he and his son both collects.
Oh, what year was that?
Yeah. He came back to Japan the 2004, 5, and maybe once or twice after that. You know, he comes to Japan with comes over here with his son and goes to motor show.
Wow. So
Yeah.
he's pretty regularly over in Japan. Is even the past couple of years, has he been over?
Not a couple years. He was here 5 years ago or so. Yeah.
I remember when I was living in Japan, he came over and he was there for the signing when they signed Kenta.
Right. He was here. Yeah.
And
He
him and Jimmy Hart
hosted the Japan tour. Like
Right.
he came out as an opening segment.
like like MC.
Yeah. Very much like your, I don't know, Antonio Inoki or being Hulk Hogan, I think. Today's wrestling fans have never seen Hulk Hogan actually wrestle, I don't think. You have to be older than 45 or older than 50 to remember Hulk Hogan wrestled in Japan, regular. He also did the albums here in Japan, I forgot. Like in 82, 83, he did an album here.
He did it like a rock album, right?
Yeah, LP, vinyl.
What was it called?
God, I can't remember. There was a band though. He was playing bass.
Did he sing on it too?
I don't remember. He was rock. It was of course record, but it wasn't quite top 40 or anything like that. It was good wrestler cut album, But he did the commercial too, like air conditioning commercials too,
Was he famous for a commercial where he sang that children's song, the Sunday, Monday, Tuesday song? Do you remember him being in some commercial in Japan for that? I forget what product it was for.
He did more than one commercial here. Yeah. I think he should be compared to, because he was lectured by, I think we should compare Hulk Hogan with people like Dick Bayer and Freddie Blassie.
As really important in Japanese pro wrestling history, really an important cog in what happened in.
Yeah, at the very first tour, with New Japan back in 1980, he was brought in as a heel, right?
Mm-hmm.
He had Freddie Blassie, classy Freddie Blassie.
So he had a little bit of that advantage. He had Freddie Blassie.
Yeah, not just an appearance, but during the very first tour for 3 weeks, every day, every night, all night long, Freddie Blassie was lecturing Hulk Hogan. If you are going to act like a star in this country, they will treat you as a star. Handle yourself as a star. They'll treat you as a star. And all those lecture every night, every day, Hulk Hogan got it. It's like, this is how you do it. There's a lot of mentors. People like Freddie Blassie was very, a very important figure to have early on.
So then what else is there that we need to know about Hulk Hogan's Japan time? Is there anything that we missed? Is there anything that's, I feel like that there are a lot of points we can.
A lot of things that probably
think
people
about, yeah.
don't know is that Hulk Hogan and Karl Gotch met in Japan.
Not in Florida?
Well, the Florida, Karl Gotch does not hang out with any wrestling people.
I see.
He was anti-establishment, anti-NWA, He didn't even come to the Sportatorium,
Wow.
He's not very good friends with people like Eddie Graham, But every summer or so, Karl Gotch used to come to Japan and spend summer here in Japan. And one or two tours, Karl Gotch and Hulk Hogan was in Japan at the same time. And they met. And Karl Gotch thought Hulk Hogan was such a nice guy.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's like a two different school, right? Yeah.
We never really think about it because where could we eat? Like you were saying earlier, some wrestlers or some companies would try to hide their work over in different countries because they wanted to protect
for the results.
Yeah, for the results, or they
here and the other player,
Yeah, or if somebody lost, they wanted to just leave it in that country.
Right. Or don't tell anybody about it, kind of thing,
So
yeah, how well the fact that Tiger Jeet Singh was huge babyface in Toronto, Canada, but he always he was hiding that fact so well that Tiger G made sure he was just complete heel in Japan while he's in Japan.
Wild heel.
Yeah, he didn't want people to know anything at all about his Toronto character,
He lives in Japan now, doesn't he?
Who?
Tiger Jeet Singh, doesn't he live in Nagoya?
I don't know.
I heard he has a restaurant.
Oh, he does have restaurant, but I don't think he lives here though.
Oh, I have no idea. Okay.
Yeah, he has a India restaurant. Yes, he does.
Like curry restaurant or something in
yeah,
Nagoya
yeah.
area.
I think somebody's using his name.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, that makes more sense. But
yeah, because in Toronto, Canada, Tiger Jeet Singh has his castle, I mean, like a couple hundred acres, right?
He's fine, I'm sure.
yeah. So there's quite a few people, American wrestlers, Canadian wrestlers, who have huge status in Japan.
But Hulk Hogan, I think, is really he should be along the side of Bruiser Brody and Andre the Giant and Stan Hansen.
Of course.
He was there. I mean, IWGP is connected to him.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, when that happened, when he won the IWGP in 1983, when he beat Inoki, how did the crowd react to that? Were they surprised by that?
Oh yeah, because everybody expected, happy ending that the Inoki, the first inaugural IWGP heavyweight tournament, and he created it to establish the undisputed World Heavyweight Championship and all these things, and people bought the whole storyline of it, and that was going to be Inoki's night at the end, and then Inoki came up with something real special, and Hulk Hogan beat him instead, and it was established Hulk Hogan even more special, right?
Yeah. It really sent him on there was so much momentum, it seemed, from that coming back to the States.
I think so. Even above Andre the Giant.
He's like a reverse export.
Yeah. Then 5 years later, 1990, Wrestling Summit, 3 companies, WWE, New Japan, and All Japan, all worked together at the Tokyo Dome, and Hulk Hogan, Stan Hansen single match happened, and Hulk Hogan beat him. Oh my gosh, right? And
and after that, one more New Japan run, and that was it until after the WWE and WCW. We all know what happened in around 2000 when WCW was sold. Hogan's contract wasn't. I don't think it was. I don't know.
It wasn't part of it. But
he went over to New Japan.
Vince McMahon came up with a new contract and wanted to use a whole NWO thing for that year's WrestleMania. So, yeah.
But yeah, I guess the moral is not the moral, rather, but the lesson here is Hogan is very important in Japanese pro wrestling history.
Oh, huge. He was such huge superstar before he was huge superstar in America. That's the point. It's not like American superstar went to Japan and did things. He had his Japanese run prior to American run. Well, that was the point.
And you can argue that if it never happened, I don't know if we would have the same Hulk Hogan that
I kind of doubt it, because for those 3, 1980, 81, 83, 84, probably those 4-year period, Inoki was sitting right next to Antonio Inoki night after night after night after night. He learned the national babyface should be kind of image, Inoki is Antonio Inoki 24/7, huh?
Right.
And the biggest superstar, biggest babyface there is to be. And Hulk Hogan really learned that just by standing right next to Inoki for those 4-year period. That's interesting, isn't it?
It's important.
Yeah.
It's an important fact because it connects a lot of points.
And I think because it's a lot harder to be babyface than being heel. I think being heel is a lot easier to get over, and what you wanted to accomplish, accomplished, But being babyface is very difficult, because all those male wrestling fans will always go against you,
It's about knowing how to connect with the audience in that moment.
Yeah, and a lot of the wrestling fans, especially male wrestling fans, are all ready to boo your babyface.
Oh,
You
of
know,
course.
I
Especially
mean,
certain
think about
cities.
John
Yeah.
Cena. You know,
Oh yeah.
Cena's popular, but half the time people still want to boo you, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard.
But he did it and made it seem kind of easy.
Yeah, so I learned a lot from Antonio Inoki. You know, Inoki's comeback and Hulk Hogan's comeback is identical. It's punches.
It's very true. I mean, it punches and just kind of firing up and using gestures instead of really wrestling.
Yeah, and then ask crowd, should I punch this guy?
Right, exactly. Just
Yeah, oh,
pumping the
very
energy
similar.
up. Yeah.
So similar.
It actually it's that's a great point. I never really thought about it like that, but it's
Yeah, Inoki's Enzigiri to Hulk Hogan's big boot.
but the same template.
Oh, very same.
And I always thought
And Inoki's Ichi-ni-san da is like your Hulk Hogan's never-ending posing.
right.
Yeah, so similar though.
It was his interpretation.
Yeah, and last time he was in Japan, when I spoke with Hulk Hogan, he said he has a secret dream that it's not gonna happen, but his secret dream is to have single match against Anthony Inoki one last time. you know,
Huh.
both guys are so old now.
I don't know if that
But,
would I don't know how
no,
that
no,
would
that's
work
not gonna
out.
happen. But Hulk Hogan respects Inoki that much.
Yeah. And every time I've heard Hogan speaking about his time in Japan, it always seems like he really feels how important it was to his career.
Yeah, I believe it that he really enjoyed it. He was in practically every tour. At one point, like in 82, 83, he comes to Japan what 4, 5, 6 tours a year. Staying 3 or 4 weeks at a time and staying in the same hotel. And he really learned the neighborhood. He can walk around Shinjuku all by himself, and he has good time.
So he probably learned how to be a superstar in Japan before he came back and
Yeah,
became who
and
we know.
he does his autograph like there's like a 3-second autograph kind of technique that you shake a lot of fans' hands, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of times you have to sign an autograph, but there's a time that you can take 5 minutes to write your name and your person's name or thank you or real nice autograph. But there's another time you can only have 2 seconds to sign an autograph, just Hulk, right? And he learned all that in Japan.
He had a special kind of learning experience, a kind of special
Yeah,
excursion.
always in good mood and take photos with fans, never say no. And but at the same time that he's like just generate this strong enough aura that people won't come up to you right away. They'll hesitate, but he'll tell people that he's friendly, so people come over, shake hand, take pictures, sign an autograph a little bit, and leave him alone, kind of thing.
He learned how to be a friendly monster.
Like a Hollywood superstar. I mean, everybody knows you on the street, kind of thing.
And it was in Japan where he found all this, I suppose. That's what.
Yeah, and then go to yakitori place and create menu that it's not even in the menu that he asked master to do the teriyaki chicken for him. He doesn't want a small piece. He wants a big piece. There was no such thing in menu, but they created a new menu for him.
Which restaurant is this?
At the yakitori place right by Keio Plaza Hotel. He goes over there every night, and he didn't want to have small yakitori shish kebab thing. It's like, I want the big piece of chicken with same sauce.
Wow.
And yeah, so they created a new menu for him.
That says a lot. I mean, that says it right there.
Oh, a lot of tales. Now that everybody knows Ribera Steakhouse, right?
Yep.
And Ribera Steakhouse was not famous until Bruce Brody discovered him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, walked around by the hotel and then it's like, oh, let's go in and eat. And happens to be Rivera Steakhouse, and Bruiser Brody and Mr. Rivera became friends, and before you knew it, all the wrestlers were there. It's just like almost like a urban legend, huh?
Kinda. Where all the legends sort of started out out in Tokyo.
And during those initial early years, Hulk Hogan and Adrian Adonis was always together. They were always getting on cab together. They always had lunch together. They even worked out together. They were always, they were there every day. They just hanging out together every day.
So they were the kind of best buddies while they were on tour together in New Japan.
In Japan, yeah.
Yeah.
Adrian Adonis and Hulk Hogan, though, interesting, huh?
Did they also tag when they were together there?
No, they didn't tag.
Oh, was that
Adrian always heel?
Oh, so Hulk Hogan was already face. He was baby face already. Okay.
Yeah. Hulk Hogan, Inoki, Fujinami against Adrian Adonis, Dick Murdoch, somebody else, something like that. Adrian was regular. Adrian and Bob Orton as a tag team. Adrian and Dick Murdoch as a tag. Adrian as a single. And Adrian is another wrestler that the Japanese fans has such a fond memory. So, most of the American fans remember Adrian Adonis as just the gay gimmick, blonde hair, overweight, purple tights guy, right?
Kind of gorgeous George, but more updated, a little more sleazy.
Real sleazy, yeah.
But if you watch his matches, I mean, he's
early matches or AWA matches or black leather jacket match, or even the Madison Square Garden Bob Backlund against Adrian Adonis single match.
Yes,
that was good.
Yeah, he was a terrific wrestler. Absolutely.
Inoki against Adrian single, Fujinami against Adrian single, Andre the Giant against Adonis single. Real good match. Believe it or not.
Really? I bet that's on the New Japan
IWGP.
Network. Yeah.
IWGP, yeah, single tournament. Yeah. And it almost made it look like Adrian Adonis almost beat Andre. It really did.
So, okay, before we go, this is the question I'll ask you, and we can give it to our listeners. So if you had to recommend a match or two to watch of Hulk Hogan's in Japan, what would it be to kind of get started? What would you recommend to fans? What's something
very first match, handheld camera on YouTube, non-televised match, somebody taped it, Stan Hansen against Hulk Hogan at the Korakuen, non-televised match.
Wow.
Actually, it's really good.
I've never seen that. I'll have to check that out too.
83 June, the very first IWGP tournament final, Inoki against Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan goes over. That's a good one. Hulk Hogan, Stan Hansen tag team going up against Inoki and Bob Backlund. That's a good match.
MSG final.
Yeah. Inoki, Hulk Hogan going up against Killer Khan and Kim Doc. Tournament final, 82. That's a good one too. And the couple, Hulk Hogan against Andre single. Those are pretty good. Hulk Hogan against Abdul the Butcher single. That's pretty good too.
Pretty bloody.
Yeah. That's how Hulk Hogan did the very first hulking up in Japan.
Wow. So that's the official first Hulk up is against Abdul the Butcher.
As I remember, yeah.
Wow. There's a fun trivia fact for everyone out there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because, the wrestlers test things, like you try, like almost as an experiment. You do a few things in the ring. What works, you do it again. What didn't work, you wouldn't do it again. And Hulk Hogan juiced up, all bloodied up, and Abdul the Butcher doing more damages, and Hulk Hogan hulking up, and you then start giving punches, right?
But now when you describe that, I could also imagine Antonio Inoki doing the same thing. Same pattern.
Much,
pointing,
yeah,
hulking up, looking at the crowd.
Inoking up. Yeah.
Saying, come on. Not feeling any pain, scaring the opponent. It's the same almost.
And then ask the audience if you could punch him.
Right.
And people go, yeah, get him,
and gets
get him.
their approval.
Yeah, of course. And then people go, yeah, do him, get him. And then, you know, the rest of the story now.
Well,
Interesting, huh?
very, very interesting because it's another
Yeah,
way to
that's
look
why
at it.
it's very important to go back to real old footage. You always learn something, things you missed for first time, you know?
And
Or
especially
you
these
watched the
days.
whole thing 30 years ago, you didn't have the eyes for it, you know? You're watching the matches with kids' eyes, you know, 16-year-old eyes. When you're 20, you look through something. When you're 30, 35, you watch other things, you know? So it's important to go back to old footage and watch the match one more time with different attitude.
Yeah,
You learn a lot more. Seriously.
absolutely. Especially these days when we have more time on our hands.
Oh, don't we all? All right. But I'm hoping that the people like our podcast, and this is our regular podcast. And I would like today's fans to, you know, send us questions, and not just answering those questions, but we'll go back and we ourselves learn something from it too, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. We can talk about Stan too in Japan, because people have idea that the Stan Hansen was huge American superstar, the most famous Texas cowboy in Japan. And how come he was that famous? And there's a lot of things we can learn from, you know?
That'll have to be like a double-sized episode. Or there's always
Seriously, Stan Hansen is the most popular wrestler. And what's interesting was, though, he was never babyface. He always worked heel, but people loved him. You know,
they always did his gesture. You, yeah,
yeah, you, yeah,
and but people connected with it somehow. They loved it.
yeah. No storyline, no fancy wrestling moves. He just comes in and give people the vicious looking shoulder blocks. Boom, people fly all over the place. And the finish was simple, clothesline, but nobody gets up. You know what I'm saying?
And he'd even attack the crowd without even hesitating.
Yeah, that tradition goes back to like people like Abdul the Butcher and the Sheik. I was chased by Abdul the Butcher and the Sheik when I was what, fourth grade, fifth grade,
You were telling me about
with my
this, yeah.
school buddies. Yeah, and he wasn't gonna come and attack you, but you felt like, you know, he was going to, right? So you run for real, you know.
So when you were that young, were you really scared when you were getting
Of
chased?
course.
Did you? What happened? What was it like?
You run with everybody else. Then a minute later, you laugh so hard. You know, it was the greatest thing. You know.
Wow, that's got
Yeah.
to be such a special memory.
Yeah, and then when he turns around, we chase him again, and so we might be able to touch his back. You know,
Right.
like a real sweaty back he
Yeah,
has.
like it's real,
You
just to make
touch the
sure
guy's
it's
back.
real.
Yeah, and then touch the game ball. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I did that as a kid. Abdul the Butcher. Yeah. The Sheik. Tiger Jeet Singh. Yeah. I never thought I would be able to meet those people, you know, later on, you know.
So for your generation were those guys, and for my generation was today's topic for Hulk Hogan. He was at his peak when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But
so he's it's a lot bigger meaning historically too, you know.
more than I think we all think. Then there's so much he did in the United States, so it's easy to not realize how big of a deal he was in getting pro wrestling in Japan really off the ground, especially when TV got more involved in the late 70s and early 80s.
And also Vince McMahon, you know, with his national expansion, he did not think Bob Backlund was his champion, right? He needed somebody like Hulk Hogan, your comic book hero, you know?
Larger than life character.
Yeah, yeah. And I genuinely believe that Hulk Hogan really learned all those, you know, the manners and how to handle himself and how to be a star in establishment, all these things from Inoki. I really believe that.
Inoki is a direct influence and
big, huge influence. Yeah.
Not inspiration.
And how to be that character 24/7. You know?
We'll have to come to Inoki someday too.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Oh, we can talk about the book's been written, movies been made. You know, the Inoki is somebody we really have to study. You know,
Yeah.
and well, let's do one on Stan Hansen, the one on Brody. We can talk about Inoki. We can talk about Giant Baba, Choshu, Fujinami, Jumbo, Tenru. Why these people mean so much? You know. Yeah.
And not just in Japan, but in they're all connected to the United States too. All the
Because
names
you
you
can
just mentioned.
compare that,
Yeah.
what Bret Hart mean, or what Shawn Michaels mean, or the Rock Stone Cold era, different kind of babyface. Then John Cena era, people even like CM Punk, the Brock Lesnar, Goldberg. They all have different character and what it means and what worked and what didn't. We can learn so much from it.
Okay, how about this? If any of the listeners out there have any requests on the Patreon, just leave us a note. You can get a hold of us on Twitter as well. I'm Justin M at Justin M Knipper. And Fumi, what's your Twitter handle?
Oh, Twitter, Fumihiko Dayo, Fumihiko Dayo. Fumihiko Dayo. Fumihiko Dayo means it's Fumi.
And if you have anybody that you'd like us to cover in particular,
yeah. Or you
great.
can find me, Fumi Saito, on Facebook and send me a message. We're friendly. Yeah.
Right. Is there anything else we need? Maybe next time let's focus on Stan Hansen. How about that?
Yeah, let's do that.
So that'll be our
Stan means so much because he was part of the 1984 National Expansion Group. He was going to join this very initial group to go to WWF National Expansion, but instead he chose All Japan's schedule over it.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unload, so we'll get to that next time for sure.
Oh yeah.
But everybody, if you have questions and comments, you can leave them on the Patreon, or you can find them on the Facebook Patreon post page. So if that's it,
yeah.
I think that's it. So I guess if that's
okay, let's come back next week.
Yeah,
sometime soon.
Okay. Okay. For Fumi, I'm Justin.
So long from Tokyo.
Right that